friends, it's Amy at Doki Doki Forest. Welcome. I'm so glad you are here. Now, yesterday I shared a video where I created my very first animal creature art doll, so you can check that out if you haven't yet. But today we are going to get back into gluing. So I have my Beatrix Potter book. This was a book that I picked up used, and it had stickers all inside, which gave me the idea to turn it into an altered book of some kind. And it's pretty much a glue book because I have been gluing lots of images in here. And it's changed a bit over time, which is interesting because, sometimes you start a creative project and you think it's going to go one way, and then it kind of goes in a different direction, and you just kind of go with it. Why fight it, right? So when I first started this glue book, I was thinking of keeping it all spring related. So my first few pages, I took inspiration from the stickers that the previous owner had put on the pages, and I made some spring pages, like spring rain and flowers and that sort of thing. But then I started taking inspiration from the words on the pages themselves. So this has morphed into from a spring book into, a book where I'm allowing the words to kind of inspire me to choose images that go along with that. So on these pages, we have, of course, our gentleman, that's in quotes, gentleman fox, who has just encountered Miss Jemima Puddle-Duck, and, hears her woes about how she wants to lay eggs, and no one thinks that she can lay eggs because she's a bad sitter. And he's like, "Oh, I got just the spot for you. Come with me, and I will take you to your own little shed. It already has feathers inside. It's cozy and comfortable. Come on in." Now, if that offer sounds too good to be true, it's because it is. The warning signs are everywhere, and Miss Jemima Puddle-Duck doesn't see any of them or doesn't pay attention to them. And she's like, "That sounds awesome. Let's go." So my images for these pages are about walking through the woods and coming across a fox. So I'm finding fox images and woodsy images. And, just any images that really kind of help support the story and the words that are on the page. So I like to lay out my images before I start gluing, just because I never know exactly where I want them to go at first. I move them around and around. And, when you glue them on the page right away, you don't always have any wiggle room. Some glues are more forgiving and you can still have some time to move them, but other glues, they stick so fast that as soon as you put the image down, you may not be able to move it. And I kind of like to have that time with the images and just looking at them and seeing how they go together. That's just part of my process. And I love that image on the right. It's like I think it's a faux fur blanket, and it has a little fox pillow on there, and that was sent to me in Happy Mail from Care over at My Take at the Lake, and I love that, and I feel like it just goes perfectly with the fox, setting up this cozy little shed for Miss Jemima Puddle-Duck. And then this bird feeder with the bird going in, the blue bird going in, and it's shaped like I guess a cat. It looks kind of like a strange kind of cat, but it works. And, the bird's just going right into the cat's mouth to go into its nest. So, that's exactly pretty much what Miss Jemima Puddle-Duck is doing. She's basically going right into the fox's mouth. And meanwhile, she's lured in by all of these feathers and, a home already being there. So I wanted to have feathers on the page. And then, of course, we have to have some foxes on the page. And then I found a little kind of a treehouse, I guess, on the right there, the top right. And that kind of reminded me of the shed that the fox has set up. I couldn't find anything that looked exactly like what he has there with like the thatched roof, but I thought that was pretty close. And then we have to have some eggs because, of course, the fox is not just dreaming about eating, having some roast duck. He's also thinking about those eggs. I mean, he just has a full course dinner all planned out in his mind. So we want this to be a nice woodsy page. This image here, this two birds image with the feather, I never figured out where that should go. And spoiler alert, it doesn't get glued onto either of these pages. So let me know if you think I should add it, and if so, where? Because I just couldn't figure it out, and I wasn't sure if I wanted any words on the page. So I omitted it for now, but I'm still kind of thinking about it. So this has been a very fun project for me. I am almost finished with it. I only have a couple of pages left, and I think I'm going to have one be a bird theme with all birds flying around. And what's the last page? Oh, then I have a page where the dogs come to the rescue, so that's going to be a very dog-themed page with dogs everywhere. So I have been having a good time, and I do like taking inspiration from the words on the page, so I'm thinking I might do that again. I might take another book. I don't know what it will be. Maybe something from a book sale, something used most likely, and, keep going with this sort of idea because I'm enjoying it. Oh, and speaking of bluebirds and nests, this does not really have to do with a nest. I'm not sure why I said that, but I have my bluebird image here, and the other day I was up in the studio and I was creating away at my table here, and I hear this strange sound. I hear these birds, and they sound unlike any birds I've ever heard before, and they sound really close. And I was like, what is that noise? So I look over at my window, and I see these two little bird heads in the window. And they look almost like English starlings. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe two little starlings landed there. And I go over to the window, slowly, of course, because I don't want to spook them. And I get a closer look, and they have little spots on them, and I'm still wondering, what are these? I can tell they're little baby birds, but I'm like, what are these little birds? And suddenly, the mom and dad come flying in to feed their babies, and it's bluebirds. I couldn't believe it. I'm going to put some footage in here so you can see, but I was so amazed. And these baby birds were old enough where they could fly, because they did wind up flying off after about maybe half an hour or so. But it was so cute. I've never been that close to bluebirds before. And it was really, really awesome to see them feeding their babies and, flying back and forth. And the babies are so cute because they're just sitting there. But then when the parents get close, they start scrunching down, and they're fluttering their little wings and opening their beaks, and hoping to get a meal. So it was really cute. And I'll put an image in here. This is going to be a bluebird feeding the baby like a big caterpillar. So if you don't like that, just look away, and then I'll tell you when to come back. So that way you don't get grossed out. But I was just fascinated. Okay, so you can look back again now. And we will continue on with our gluebook page. That was just a quick little segue about bluebirds. They haven't been back since then, though. So it's one of those things where you're just like, oh, I'm really glad I caught that moment. It was just like a half hour. And if I hadn't been in the studio, if I had been anywhere else in the house, I would have had no idea that that was happening. So don't you just love when things happen like that? You just happen to be in the right place at the right time to see something really cool, or hear something, or experience something. And it can be quick. And you think, if I'd gotten here 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later and left, I could have missed it. Especially with nature. Nature's very, you go for a walk, and sometimes you don't really see anything, and sometimes you see something amazing. I went for a walk down a trail one time, and I almost missed a big owl that was right there on the left, just sitting on the branch looking right at me. But they're so quiet that if I hadn't looked up, I would have completely missed it. And then it flew away. So it was very quick, but very cool. Okay, now back to gluing. No more bird stories. Well, I can't promise you that. But yeah, so I've got my feathers on the page. I've got some eggs, or I have one egg glued down right now over there in the middle on the left page at the top. And some foxes. We've got some woods. We're like emerging through the woods into the feathers. And there's a little fox sniffing around at the bottom there. Now, this version that I'm gluing in, this version of the Jemima Puddle-Duck book, is abridged. It's an oversized, abridged version. And I'm going to read you a little bit from the original tale that describes the shed. The shed was almost quite full of feathers. It was almost suffocating, but it was comfortable and very soft. Jemima Puddle-Duck was rather surprised to find such a vast quantity of feathers. But it was very comfortable, and she made a nest without any trouble at all. So she goes in there, and there's lots of feathers, but it doesn't seem to bother her at all. She's just like, oh, yeah, okay, well, maybe that's a little weird, but hey, it's comfortable. She's all about comfort, not about safety, that's for sure. One of the things I really love about making glue books is how they are like picture books, where you can flip through them, you can make up your own story, or maybe you have an idea of what it is when you're creating it, but if you handed it to somebody else, it would be really cool to see what ideas they come up with, especially if you give it to like a little kid, because you never know what they're going to say. But it would be really fun to have other people look at it and kind of make up either a story or just tell you the mood or what they feel when they look at the page, or which images maybe that they really find themselves drawn to, because we may all have a different picture that we're like, oh, I love that one, or there might be a picture that someone's like, I don't like that at all, and that's interesting too. So I just love these picture books basically that we're making. So I just have a couple little areas to cover here, because you know me, and trying to cover the page, it's just kind of what I like to do. So I always save my scraps for those sort of things, and I'm just ripping off this edge here because I felt like it covered up too much of the original illustration, and I really wanted to be able to see a little more of that foxy gentleman. And then it is done. Nope, one more scrap. Now it's done. So here are the finished pages. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you're working on something too while you're watching, if you're gluing away over there. I hope so. Or relaxing, that's great too. Thank you so much for joining me over here today. I wish you a wonderful week, and I will see you again soon.